Chairman, if we could start over. Thank you.
All right. I'd like to thank everybody for making today's meeting. I'd like to thank all of our stakeholders, our board members, and our staff, and our CEO, Ms. Faye DeMassimo. This time we allot to start our meeting today, time being 11:12. If we would have a roll call, Beverly.
Good morning. Yes, sir. Director Emerson? Director Odell? Not present for the vote. For the roll call, Director Stone?
Present.
Thank you. Director Lockett? Not present for the roll call. Director Adams? Director Robinson?
Present.
Director Leggett?
Present.
Director Taylor? And Chairman Cody?
Present.
Chairman, you have a quorum of today's meeting. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Beverly. I'd like to thank everybody for coming to our executive governance meeting today. At this time, I would like to bring in our presentation from our staff. Mr. Massimo.
Yes, Chairman. Just want to make sure, can everyone hear me fine?
I hear you.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Okay.
yes.
I know we had a little struggles last week, so I wanted to make sure that everyone could hear. First thing we're going to do is our communications update, and I'm going to turn that over to Ariel Johnson, our communications director, to deliver that report.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman Cody, the board of directors, Ms. Faye, and our colleagues here today. We're going to just quickly go through our communications report. So the cat tracker, we are continuing to see significant growth with our cat tracker on the Apple side as well as the Google Play side. The Apple side is just a little more effective at this moment, but that just means that communications just have to, go a little harder for our lovely Samsung users. Right now, we have about more than 7,000 downloads together, which is really good, which means people are really using the cat tracker and they're, aware of this great tool. The service alerts, we're also gaining some traction with our tech service alerts. We are adding more categories. We just opened up a ferry line. So now people who ride the ferries, whether they're visiting or regular riders, they now can also get service alerts to their phones about our water ferry service. Social media, one of our biggest tools to get our service, events, newsletters, anything like that out. This is just we're examining how to report our social media stats to you guys. So this is just one way we're doing it right now, where we have just an outlook of how many followers we have. And then we also have how it's doing month by month. And as you saw in your board report, we have some growth to do with gaining more social media followers. Because the more social media followers we have, the more people will know about our.
Is it just me? I don't hear anything.
I don't hear anything.
Anything either. It's all of us.
Hello? Directors, can you hear me now?
Barely.
Not loud enough.
What about now?
Still.
Barely.
Mhm.
All right, so I'm just gonna try to speak up so you guys can hear me. Chatham Area Transit had a cool opportunity to be featured in WSAV's Black History Month special when they featured the first African American operator, Mr. Roger Shanks. We have a QR code in your board report where you can actually watch that special. And that will end my report.
Thank you.
Chairman, before we move on to the next report, one thing that I wanted to have Ms. Johnson comment on is with Cat Tracker, we are working on activating some modules with Clever that will enable us to be more reactive or interactive in the information we send out through Cat Tracker, especially around special event kinds of activities and so forth. So just know that that is a component of how we're going to be using the Cat Tracker moving forward, that it's an improvement in that system that you'll see. And I just wanted to mention that. A couple of other items that related to communications that I wanted to mention is, as has been noted in the recent snapshot reports to you, we've had a really successful legislative session thus far, and just a really successful grant season, let's call it. So in terms of our coordination with GDOT, we have seen a significant amount of new funding opportunity that we believe over the next month or so we will be confirming and finalizing those additional dollars. And then, of course, we had the grant announcement yesterday that we forwarded to you. That information went live this morning, and we are working with both Senator Ossoff and Senator Warnock's office around a press release for that. And then there'll be some additional information forthcoming to you all as board members and to our local officials, including Chairman Ellis, Mayor Johnson, and so forth, on further announcements. So a lot of exciting news there. And today we're going to spend a lot of our time on the new or where we are in the process on the new master plan, Chatham Connect. So, but that'll be a little bit later in the program. Just wanted to mention those things as a part of the communications report. With that, we'll go.
I have a question on communication.
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to know, were we able to track how well we did during St. Patrick's Day preparation to get the word out? Do we have any idea of how well we did with that, or any way to evaluate that?
Very good, Director Robinson. We were going to mention that during the financial report, but I'll go ahead and bring it up now. We are still scrubbing. We've still got data coming in from the full performance of the St. Patrick's Day activities, the event, the parade, and all the activities for the 2 days. And so at the April board meeting, we expect to be able to give you a full report that includes all the communication pieces. It also will include all the financial performance related to our agreement with the city and other parts of that. So we're still scrubbing data right now and expect to have a full report for you in April. The next presentation to committee is the service delivery and operational update, and with Dr. Maney.
Good morning.
Good morning.
All right, thank you. We have a guest, we have a full house, so I'm not going to spend too much time so I can give others a chance to talk, because if not, I'll talk all day, and I don't want to do that. So on my first slide. All right, so on the training side, we only had one good training, safety training. This was about the wheelchair securement and also emergency switch. That is on the driver's side. In case of an emergency, they'll press that on and that will get to control. And if necessary, we call the police. So most of them had this training a long time ago. So it was a refresher training, and we get that done the month of February. So that was on the training side. Next slide, please. On the fixed price side, I was a little down. I thought the on-time performance was going to be a little higher. It was 0.2%, which is still better than last month, the month of January. Just like this. Still on the fixed route, the ridership, again, was better than last month, which is 130,944. So we had a percent higher than the month of January. The do not runs went up, if you can see on the table, compared to last month, which was 88. That's the rounds that didn't go out. We had 110. And so that brought out our total very high to 133. That's with late runs, accident, road calls, and all that stuff. On the paratransit side, so over here, okay. Now, for time purposes, I will explain this maybe another later time. The missed trip, as I find out, it doesn't mean the trips that were missed. So what it is, we have a window of 15 minutes. So let's say if you're scheduled to be picked up at 10 and we get there 10:16, we are 1 minute late. So that means it's a miss. And the passengers sometimes will say, okay, oh, you are late, I'm not riding with you guys. So on the next presentation, we're going to define what is late and what is missed. And okay. Where am I on this? Okay, still on the paratransit side, not much to report on here. It's just that we had a training for the paratransit side, how to secure wheelchair. Our data was showing, safety data was showing that most people were not tied down right, so we had a training, a refresher training on that. So that's good. Next to the marine, this is the only time that I think I'm going too fast. Is that right? Okay, good. On the marine side, it's always the good news. Ridership's high. At the month of February, we had 13.5% higher than the month of January. So that's probably running only 2 boats. There's still demand, and we are capable of moving people around. So just good. Maintenance. The only thing that I have to report on this one, if you look at the mean distance between vehicle failure, it was 19 and 17. Is coming down now to the national average of 14,303, which is pretty much the national standard. And that means that we are spending too much fixing our over useful life vehicles with 120,000 miles. So they're breaking down and we can catch up. That's why this number keeps going down. The higher, the better. So we'll see what happens next month report. Okay. And with that, just a little update on my division. So we have the CDA training that I spoke about some time ago. We saw a facility, and our CEO, Ms. Faye, is working on that to see if we can. The 2 things that is holding this program is a facility and also training team, which we got that already in place. So as soon as we have a facility, we're going to announce to the public about when that non-CDA training is going to begin. On the fixed ride side, we have a bid 3 times in a year. So the next bid is March 27th. And WRA, your team did a very good job. And so that is on time and as scheduled. March 27th is when the bid will go in effect. We talked about, okay, sorry. That means that the drivers will all group up and pick up the assignment. So some routes, if we modify one, we like the 14, we put an extra bus. So that means every is by CBA, which is the agreement with the authority and the union. So every quarterly, they will all meet and pick up the assignment. So the next one coming up is March 27th. They bid on it by seniority. So if you have seniority over me, you get to choose what you want before me. Yeah. Yes. Some people have a straight run. They want to make more money, it's 10-hour run. So That's all seniority. So it goes down all the way down to the bottom. So if you just, just join us, and I'm here 20 years, I get privilege to pick before you. Yeah, people have like preference. They want Monday to Friday. Some others want 10-hour run. They want to make more overtime. So it depends. But by seniority, when it gets to your 10, then you decide what you want. Yeah. So we do that 3 times in a year. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, it is exciting. You should all come and see how the bit goes on. And then on the paratransit vehicles, the only holdup is the charging stations that we went on Georgia Power. So my anticipation is that I just don't want to say a date that is no. I expect by first week of May, we should have all the vehicles here and ready to roll out. The last time I reported, I was thinking March. We're in March, and I said April. So now, by May, I'm sure everything will be in place. Our weekly job fair is good, and I encourage you all to advertise word to mouth that CAD has a weekly Friday walk-in job fair for all our department, all our positions. You walked in and let us know what you want. So far, it's good. It's working hard. The Marine ridership count. So this is by the Coast Guard. We're supposed to have electronic data, how we record our ridership. Now, the reason why the Coast Guard demands electronic version is, should a boat capsize down or anything happens, they have a count of who was on the boat. Because right now, currently, we counting people on paper. And if that paper got lost and something happened, the Coast Guard needs to know how many people on the bus. So we designed a program that we're going to use tablets, and that will be stored in a cloud-based website, whereby if anything happened, if that got lost, we can always track who was on the Marine, and that is going well. We started that last week. So the incident and accident report, when me and Phil went to Atlanta, the insurance company wanted a program where we can, all our accident report, they can share that data with us. So we're working on that, and hopefully next report, I will give you an update on that. And with that, I think I'm done.
Dr. Maney, I would also mention on the incident accident reporting, we hope that by April, we'll also have an update for you on the claim that we made with regard to the dock and the ramp that we lost. That's our equipment part of when the seawall collapse occurred. There's a portion, just the dock and the ramp belongs to CAT, and we are working with our insurance carrier because, as you may recall, there was no FTA funding opportunity that enabled us to be able to address that situation. And so we're working with our local partners. The Westin is still helping us with the construction of a temporary dock there that will enable us to continue to operate from the Westin during this interim period of time. And we are closely coordinating right now actively with the insurance company and the claims adjuster on that ramp and dock. So we'll keep you, that's sort of a ongoing active piece of this that I want to be sure to mention. And I think Dr. Maney may have mentioned it in his report on all of the training as well, but I wanted to be sure we mentioned this also, is last week, one of the other things that we engaged in preparation, and it was in your snapshot report on Friday, for all of the special event last week, was we did a refresher on de-escalation techniques and safety protocols to make sure that not only our operators, but our supervisors and our in-field staff that was serving last week had all the, sort of a top of mind refresher about dealing with situations that can occur in those really fun environments. So just wanted to mention that as well. Thank you, Dr. Maney. Our next report is financial services audit and compliance, and ask Ms. Cutter if she will deliver that report.
Good morning, everyone are present this morning, and to the public at large. I'm going to be going over the financial report for the month of February this morning. Okay, for the month of February, our expenses exceeded our revenues by $69,481. As the graph on the right depicts, we are right on target for February. However, we have $6.3 million in revenue over expenses, primarily due to position vacancies for most of the year. Revenue by source, nothing new here. The major category of revenue for the month of February were our paratransit fees based on the accrual method. Our expense category, salaries and wages, again, tops the largest expenditure category at 44% for the month of February. Cash receipts for the month are listed. Here again, paratransit being the primary source of revenue for the month of February, followed by FTA grant assistance of $313,914. The next graph shows our interest for the month. This is interest on our investment account. A year-to-date interest total $116,994. Our operating reserves as of the end of February totals $7.9 million. Human resources stats for the month of February. We had 6 new hires, 4 paratransit drivers, and 1 fixed route bus operator, and 1 transportation supervisors. Exits for the month were 2, 1 fixed route operator retirement, and 1 paratransit operator resignation. What's coming in the near future, next month, already in progress, the ITC renovation to accommodate call center operations, to include all new IT equipment. Dr. Manny talked about our paratransit vehicles that we expect to be in April, fully retrofitted and on the street in May, and working towards some fixed route replacement to be determined once funding is available. Our action items for consent consideration, radio system for electric paratransit vehicles, a forklift replacement to support maintenance operations, a camera system for the electric vehicles, and Joe Murray Rivers ITC reconfiguration. Primary work in place, the fiscal year 24 financial planning, our budget, major challenges, questions to be answered, where we're going to be with retention and recruitment, staff training and development, hardware, software needs, pension plan enhancements, and capital funding. We are also making attempts, operating funding plan to support higher operating costs, to include transit service expansions, special services, special events, computer bus service delivery to support economic development, microtransit to support low ridership areas, and our transit master plan, short and long-term financial impacts. New to FY24, a comprehensive 5-year capital plan to accommodate capital needs and, of course, funding to support those capital needs. That concludes my overview for the month of February.
Miss, I think your Director Stone has a question.
Yes.
You said that the expenditures exceeded the revenues in February, what was that attributed to? You said that in February, the revenues, the expenditures exceeded the revenues. Was there a reason for that?
The revenue, a lot of times our grant funds don't come in all in one month. It's contingent upon, excuse me, Director Stone. A lot of times our draws on our grant are, of course, their reimbursement. We've expended the money, but the grant money has not come in the same month to support the expenditure. It shows up in the following month. That's the main part of it.
Okay, I was just concerned.
Yes.
Yeah, and I was going to ask a similar question, and I'm thinking that if an explanation is given with the report, I think it would kind of make us feel more comfortable when we see that expense exceed our revenue. The other question I had is, when will we go back into union negotiations? How often does that happen?
We just negotiated a 3-year contract, Director Robinson. So 3 years from now.
And also I wanted to add,
Ms. Cutter, we can't hear you.
I also wanted to include, oftentimes it's the timing of when bills are paid, when invoices come in and when they are actually paid.
Director Robinson, I think you made an excellent suggestion, though, that if we can provide for things that just on the face of it could look as if it's a matter of concern, if we provide that note that remember that we're operating on a reimbursement basis. So you're going to have that sort of rolling look at things, and it's a snapshot in time, the reports that you see, but the overall financial structure and integrity of our budget and our day-to-day operations is really quite strong. But you're seeing that moment in time kind of look, but I think your suggestion to note that so that it's a clear record of it, both for you and for the public that sees these reports, is a really important thing. So thank you for that suggestion.
That would help. Yes.
All right, are there any other questions for Ms. Cutter? If not, we will move on to the big report for today. Today's going to be a little longer report on planning. We have our team here that has been working on the master transit plan as well as on the comprehensive operational analysis transit development plan. You'll recall we have been working those in a very coordinated, integrated way to provide a really great result and a fully integrated result, both on sort of some of the short-term and operational needs, as well as on our strategies for how we manage and grow our system in ways that can be well supported. Yes, ma'am. So I'm going to go through a brief overview sort of presentation, and then I'm going to turn it over to the team, and they're going to talk through a more in-depth presentation. We've got handouts, and for those that are not here, we will get those handouts to you. And there's also going to be an exercise and activity at the end. We will also find a way to accomplish that with those that are not here in person.
Ms. Fay, can I make a suggestion, please, to the to Director Cody? If there are items that we have to vote on, and we may lose some board members, are there any items we have to vote on in this meeting?
Director Robinson, I think I just got corrected, Miss. We're going to do the consultant's presentation, the larger presentation, a little later. I'm just doing the overview right now.
Okay.
I apologize. All right, so let's next slide. So this is the slide that you've seen several times, just making you aware of the all of the activities that are ongoing between March and June. We've spent these last months with a lot of there has been a lot of outreach even in the last months, but there's also been a lot of analysis work and thoughts, outputs that have come out that we really want to put out there and have an opportunity for the public and for stakeholder groups and for you as our board to be able to comment on. So again, this is to keep out there and your expectations of what's going to be occurring when. This is that meetings and public outreach schedule from March to June. Next slide. Keep going. Keep going. So we have 3 coordinated transit studies ongoing right now: the Transit Service Plan, which is the comprehensive operational analysis, and the Transit Development Plan, the Master Transit Plan, and then the Zero Emissions Plan that helps describe how we're going to manage all of our zero emissions buses in our fleet. The project schedule, as you can see, this really relates to that earlier schedule of remaining activities, but we started last summer and we will be finishing up this summer. And you can again see with this project schedule, a lot of the activities that occurred. The 2 big deliverables that we've seen thus far are going to be the system assessment, state of the system report, and the market analysis, in addition to some early information around funding strategies and the financial analysis of our system. Next slide. So this is merely an overview slide of the CAP bus service, the CAP mobility system, and the Savannah Bells Ferry, which are the 3 primary business lines that are currently a part of our system. We know that there's a lot of interest in first mile, last mile micro transit solutions, not only for areas that maybe have are less dense and have had some lower ridership, but also for areas where we have emerging markets like those that are around Hyundai or Amazon or Wayfair, any of these facilities that we know have made major announcements in and around our area in the region. It's another tool in our toolkit, along with, we've also talked about the possibility for express bus. And that's the type of commuter service that might also be able to afford more opportunity to connect people to jobs. Next slide. Our service is infrequent, so the sort of bottom line assessment of our service, and again, a little later in the presentation today, you're going to see a lot more detail on all of this, but our service is relatively infrequent and not necessarily available on enough days and enough times. And that's one of the things that we're going to be looking at, is what are some of those strategies of how we can improve upon that in ways that we can support and that also meet the real needs in the community. Next slide. Riders use CAT to travel on the major corridors. We know that. We know in particular some of these corridors, those are our highest ridership corridors, and they're getting to and from major places, whether that's downtown or the mall or shopping areas like Walmart and so forth. You can see all these represented on the slide that's in front of you now. Next slide. So strategies and opportunities. Fix it first. Our example strategies for fixing it first, and again, you're going to hear more about this a little later in the program, is bringing back our existing bus service or bringing it back in a way that meets the demand and is supportable for success. Investing in our key corridors throughout Chatham County. Trying newer service models, and that would certainly include microtransit, first mile, last mile type of activities, as well as express commuter. Making it safer and more comfortable to access your ride to the bus. So again, one of the things that we want to look at is those shelters and stops that are such an important part. We've said it many times, and we'll say it again now, is every transit trip starts at a stop. And so the notion of those stops being a place where you feel comfortable and secure and it's dignified and so forth is really important, and something that you'll see both an emphasis on in the planning work that we've been doing, and you're also going to see it in the upcoming budget for FY24. Next slide. expand the base, investing again in those key corridors that are connecting Chatham County and Savannah, not only internally, but to all the opportunity that's around us. Looking at how we expand transit partnerships. We've had some discussions around zero fare transit, excuse me. That's obviously one of the things, a little bit like microtransit. It's one of the things that's really a part of a conversation in the transit industry right now. What you're going to see that we're going to be talking about is something that is very targeted and focused and makes sense within our system and for our community and for us. Very, very customized and tailored. Using transportation demand management, and again, that can be everything from the microtransit to some of the express commuter options, and then integrating technologies. There's no doubt that our systems have got to reflect the current technologies in the market and be able to leverage those and use them to give the best customer experience and the most safe and reliable, fast trip to get people to the places that they need and want to go. So there's projects with big impact that could require some additional funding, but without necessarily any real structural changes to the way that we're funded. Next slide. Achieve the vision. So we want to address regional travel needs. We want to look at commuter and express. Perhaps one of the ways to do that is to look at bus on shoulder. That's likely to be something that we would be working closely with GDOT on and on state route or even interstate facilities, and looking at how we really begin to advance transit-oriented development, land use and development coordination with all the tremendous growth that's going on around us. An example is, Port Wentworth has had a lot of interest in the service expansion. We're going to be continuing a coordination with them on what that could look like and what the cost with that would be and what the operations of that would be. But Port Wentworth currently has 8,500 new single-family housing units coming up out of the ground right now. That's quite incredible. And the notion of that kind of need for major development coordination is just something that we can't afford not to pay attention to. Bigger impact projects may require new or different funding sources. And one of the things that I hope you've been able to see is, earlier in the year, we reported to you on the kind of funding success that we've had over this last year. And it's certainly been significant. But some of the things that you're going to be seeing that we've mentioned just in the last few weeks with regard to state funding opportunities, as well as some significant federal funding opportunities that we're becoming very well positioned for, are going to be an important part of this. Next slide. So with that, I'm going to stop, and that was just sort of frankly, a bit of a teaser to whet your appetite for what you're going to hear in a lot more detail a little later on. And Chairman Cody, I'm going to turn it back over to you so that the business can be taken care of for voting purposes and such, and then we'll come back to that master transit plan presentation a little later. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I'd like to thank all of you for a great presentation, staff. Next, we'll be moving on to our proposed board action items. Service Delivery Operational Committee. We're going to go into our service delivery, our financial, and our planning infrastructure, and our executive governance committee.
Chairman Cody, do we have we do have a quorum?
Beverly? We have a quorum?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am, we do.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. So next we'll be going into our service delivery.
Chairman Cody, there are no items under service delivery. The first series of consent items is under financial services audit compliance.
All right. Well, we be going into presentation now for old new business.
No, sir. I think we need to take up the consent items on the committee first, or on committees first. You've got 4 under financial services, audit compliance, and then the summer internship program under executive governance.
All right. Who do we have for service delivery operational committee?
There was no consent item there, sir.
No,
we didn't have an item there.
All right. Do we have anything on financial services?
Yes, sir. There are 4 items, and Ms. Cutter's going to come up and walk through those.
All right, thank you. Ms. Cutter?
Is the calls, the ITC configuration. The call center will be relocating to the ITC, and we are in the process of retrofitting that space to accommodate the call center. The cubicles, the quote that we are recommending for the cubicles came in at $16,879.75. The IT equipment, $15,975.74. That includes computers and needed software to support the call center. And electrician services, we estimate it to be around $15,000. The total project not to exceed $50,000. The quote and estimate so far totals $47,855.49.
We have any questions?
Yes.
We can't hear the
Two,
question.
because we have 2 schedulers up there. We have 2 schedulers, Miss James and Miss Jenks, and then you still have, I think, the supervisor. So are all 3 of those moving also, or is just the call center itself?
Those positions are part of paratransit, only call center staff.
We can't hear Ms. Cutter.
Those staff that you are referring to are a part of. Keeps going. Director Taylor, those staff are a part of paratransit operations, and at this time, the building is being reconfigured right now for call center staff.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. The next is radios to support the 10 electric vehicle paratransit vans that are on order and are due in on sometime in April. These are the radios that would be installed in those vehicles. Item C, cameras. These cameras are also for the 10 new paratransit vans that will be installed upon arrival and contract approval by the board. And the 4th item is a new forklift to support maintenance department operations at a cost of $35,268. Of course, 3 bids were received on all recommended procurements.
And Ms. Cutter,
Yes.
on the forklift in particular, we did not go with the lowest bidder. Is that correct?
We could not. The lowest bidder was not Buy America compliant.
Okay.
And we are utilizing, of course, federal dollars.
Yeah. I just want to make sure that went into the record.
Yes, ma'am. Are there any other questions?
Ms. Cutter, let me ask you to stay at the podium. Our next action item, Chairman, is for the consent committee is a summer internship program. And Ms. Cutter and I have worked together on this, so I'd like for us to talk a little bit about it with you. And it also is going to pair with the grant that we sent the email to you about yesterday. Also included funding for a 1-year-long internship with Savannah State's Engineering Technology Program. So that will be in addition to this regular college internship program proposal that we're presenting today. We're requesting board approval to proceed with developing a paid 10-week internship program for college students for fiscal year 23 and fiscal year 24. In the past, we've offered workforce development opportunities to students that are looking for summer internships. We've partnered with Georgia Teen Work, Savannah State, City of Savannah Summer 500 program, and we would like to bring forward a fresh look by developing a newly structured student internship program serving students at local colleges and technical schools within Chatham County. Once developed, it will offer undergraduate and graduate students an opportunity to gain relevant work experience and job skills through a paid internship, and that will provide the students the understanding of basic principles and practices of public transportation operations and management. We're proposing a paid internship rate of $19 per hour, and they would work an average of 20 to 25 hours per week. They're obviously not eligible for things like vacation and holiday pay and that sort of thing. We've specified the minimum requirements for the candidates, and that is included in your agenda item. And we think that this is a really important piece of developing the career opportunities pipeline to CAT, from the tremendous students in our community, to also give them an opportunity to increase their knowledge and build their work skills, and to understand, just the workplace environment, workforce demands and rewards, to really expose them to the transit industry as a great place to have a career, and to further their areas of interest. Maybe that's somebody who's in technology or someone who's in planning, but to give them the opportunity for us to mutually benefit from their exposure to our industry and our organization in terms of building their skill level and providing us with great work as a part of that. So, Ms. Cutter, did you have anything else you'd want to add?
If she's speaking, we can't hear her. And I have a couple of questions.
Only that the use of interns will significantly help in terms of fulfilling the obligations that comes with a lot of the projects that we have underway. It's also an opportunity to recruit new talent to Chatham Area Transit.
Director Robinson, I believe you had some questions.
I did. I see where we're developing a paid 10-week program. And how many hours will they spend per week? Do you know?
We suggested that it would be 20 to 25 hours per week.
And you said at a rate of $19 an hour?
Yes, ma'am.
That's very attractive. Can I apply?
We would love to see your application, I guess.
I think it's a great idea. And the other thing is the vetting process. I want us to be sure we get students who will start and stay.
That's an excellent point. And I think this is one of the ways that we think we can begin to develop a stronger presence and mindset for public transit being a career choice across all kinds of, whether it's our professional operators or whether it's our administrative staff. That this is we're an important part of the community, an important part of the community's infrastructure, and we want people to feel energized around that, those opportunities that exist here in that conversation. So we think this is a really good way to do it, Director Robinson.
I have a quick question.
Is there specific work areas they'll be interning in on?
For this first year, we are focused on technology and innovation and planning. So technology innovation space and the planning space.
Director Stone was trying to ask a question as well.
just a question of how you arrived at the $19 an hour, because I serve on a civic affairs committee for the Association of County Commissioners of Georgia, and our interns are only paid $15 an hour. So I'm just curious as to how you arrived at that figure.
I'm going to turn that to Ms. Cutter. We did have a long conversation about that and coming up with that number, and I'm going to let her walk through the process.
It was the average, the bottom was $15, and I believe the top was 24, 25, something like that, but the bottom was 15. So we went with the average.
I think Director Adams had a question also.
Yes, ma'am. How are we getting the word out about these interns, and how many interns will we have?
It would be 2 internships this year, and we will be developing the program. We already suggested in the agenda item some of the places, whether that's Savannah Tech or other schools, the colleges and institutions in the area, that we'll be working with them directly to recruit their students. So we'll also be having to integrate in with their own internship programs and protocols. And then there will be a very specific method for the student that will be engaged full-time for 1 year. I think it's going to be full-time for 1 year. That goes along with the SMART grant application that was announced earlier. And that will be a Savannah State student who's in engineering technology.
Also, is it possible that in the future we can target the College of Business also? Because I understand that, you targeted technology, but this is a business. And I think that the College of Business would really, really enjoy, being a part of that internship also.
Oh, Director, I think that's an excellent suggestion, and you're absolutely right. What we were trying to do for the first 2 was to target areas where we also have particular needs. But I think you're completely correct. I think bringing somebody in who's really in that business space and looks at it from the sort of broader operations and managing a business to deliver a service perspective will be invaluable.
Because in the College of Business, you have management, finance, IT, so
brings it all together.
Everything that we have here is in the college.
Very good. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that suggestion. That's excellent.
Can I make one more point when it comes to vetting students for a summer program that's going to last for 10 weeks? And a lot of our students don't necessarily live in Savannah as their home base. They just attend college here. And kids tend to want to go home during the summer. So when we do the application process, how do we ensure that they commit to the 10 weeks? Just something to think about.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And we'll think about that a little bit more. I don't know that I have a ready answer. Obviously, if they apply, they would understand that that's a requirement of the program. So they would be having to make their own purposeful decision to make that commitment. But I understand your point, and I think that's something that Ms. Cutter and I'll give some thoughts to as we're going about the recruitment and outreach for these positions.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? Chairman, that concludes the consent agenda items.
All right. Thank you. All right. Thank you for that report. Sounds like a very good plan to bring the students in for certain. Now we'll be going on the planning and infrastructure development.
Do we need to make a motion?
No, ma'am.
Not today, Director. It's just committees to review. And Chairman, we don't have an item under Planning and Infrastructure Development Committee, but under old and new business now we have our special presentation today on the Master Transit Plan.
All right. And next we'll move to old new business, and listen to our presentation from Nelson and Nygaard.
We've actually got quite a team here today, Chairman. I'm gonna let them introduce themselves as they come up. We're going to walk through this extensive presentation on the master transit plan. And as I said, there is going to be an activity at the end today. And for those who are not here in person, we'll make sure that we find an opportunity to engage you in that activity, either remotely or here at the office in follow-up after the meeting. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tim Priest, who's with WRA and one of the principals on the COA TDP portion of the work. Tim?
Great. Thank you, Faye. I'm Tim Priest with WRA. Can you hear me okay? Great.
A little bit more volume.
A little bit more volume. I'll lean in a little closer. I'm happy to be here. We are pretty far along in our work on the service plan and the COA TDP update. And I'd love to give you a little status update, just a few highlights of what we've discovered thus far, and hopefully whet your appetite on some initial thoughts and ideas that we're beginning to test in our analysis and to discuss with your staff. And just as a reminder, next slide. This should work, right? Do I have to point the remote somewhere? And just as a reminder, the service plan is really, if you would, think of it as the short-term plan. So think of it as your 5-year plan. And then the master plan, which you're going to hear more about in a few minutes, is really the midterm and long-term plan for our transit system. Are you able to advance to the next slide, please? Since we've gotten underway, we've really completed our look at the existing conditions. So we've looked at all of the routes and the stops and the performance and where ridership patterns have changed in recent years. I'm not going to focus too much on the details of that, but I'll share just a couple of what we see as key findings. I'll touch on recent service changes, upcoming changes. I'll share a finding that we think is important about transit service to jobs, and then I'll share just a couple of ideas that we have about where do we go next. As you probably recall, in recent changes to the service in late October, service was revised. Really, it was reduced primarily to match our schedule with the number of drivers we have available. And as you heard in the earlier updates from your staff, as they've been very, very busy seeking to hire and train new operators. The system overall is performing better in terms of at least being able to put the buses out there and provide the service that we have advertised to the public. So that took place in October. One of those changes was that it was necessary, but we quickly realized it was a mistake, was we removed service on Route 4. And we quickly brought that back just as soon as there were operators available to do so. We're now looking at some other minor, I'll call them minor revisions, which will take place just in the next few weeks. And those include adding a 5th bus during the afternoons on Route 14. It's our busiest route. Some minor retiming on the Route 6. And we're going to add an early morning trip on Route 3B specifically. So those are fairly minor changes. And essentially, I would characterize it as status quo. Now that we've matched the service with the number of drivers we have, we think we'll be able to continue reliable service pretty well with these changes. In our existing conditions work, one thing that we've noted that I want to call to your attention is how well our service is providing access to jobs. And we've looked at the location of all the jobs in the Savannah area. We divided the area into zones. They're shown on this map. And what you can see is that what we've labeled as zones 1, 2, 5, and 7 really have most of the jobs in the whole Savannah, larger Savannah urbanized area. And our current services provide transit service in zones 1, 2, and 5 fairly well. But zone 7 on our map is not well served currently. And on that map, it's the area to the north. It's in the light blue color. So it includes portions of Garden City, Port Wentworth, and Pooler. And this is an area where we also are seeing very rapid growth in jobs. So we think that's an important finding in the existing data and something we need to be mindful of as we're thinking about changes or expansions in our service.
Tim, I wanted to mention one thing really quickly is that this presentation did not go to the board ahead of time. So
Okay.
I wanted you all to know that as we're reviewing it with you now and you're able to view it on the screen, we will send a copy of this out to you immediately following the meeting so that you'll have it for further study prior to the board meeting.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Now, in terms of where do we think we might go next with the short-term recommendations, upcoming changes, let me share some initial thoughts that we have. First of all, you heard Mr. Massimo mention the importance of continuing to invest in the key corridors. And what we see right now today as the key corridors to us, we see our Abercorn Street, that's our Route 14 today. Waters Avenue, that's routes 27 and 28. MLK Boulevard, that's 25. Augusta Road, West Chatham area, that's Route 3, and as well as our downtown shuttle and the ferry. We see those as what we're calling the frequent transit network, but those are real key corridors, both today and in the short-term future. You also heard Mr. Massimo refer to looking at new service models, and I'm going to share a couple of ideas that we have right now in terms of new transit service models, and those include a microtransit pilot program area, suburban employment transit, and bus rapid transit, or BRT. First, microtransit. If you have maybe experienced this in other cities, it's a little different than a traditional fixed route bus. It basically provides service in a zone, and a customer can call up a trip either by picking up the phone and asking an operator to send them a vehicle, or they can use a app on their smartphone and they can call up a trip and it's real time. So it's a little different than paratransit, which normally requires a customer to request a trip a day ahead of time. This is pretty much real time. So if you have traveled and used Uber and Lyft, think of it like an Uber and Lyft, except with a small bus. That's very much the way it functions. Now, it is a good item to have on our menu of transit services. It is not cost effective to replace our busy bus routes. Okay, so like the Route 14 and the 28, those are very busy corridors. However, on the fringes of the area where we have places we want to serve, but we believe or we've experienced that the number of riders per hour really doesn't warrant the investment of a fixed route, this is a very good strategy to test. Yes, sir.
You can't hear anything.
How large are they, and do they share ridership?
Good question. The question is the size of the vehicles and do they share ridership? The vehicles can be anything that we want them to be. It could be as small as a van, like a Dodge Caravan, all the way up to a small bus. They are typically large vans or small buses. That's what we've seen in most areas that seems to work well. So anything from 10 to 20 passengers seems to be a good size for that service. And it's okay for our service area, our zone, to overlap with other fixed routes. In fact, that's really desirable. So we're looking at that as a possibility to expand the menu of services to the customer in places where fixed route really isn't cost effective.
Tim, I would also mention too that particular service model is also one that would be a part of a first mile, last mile connectivity, which is something that several of our board members have expressed a lot of interest in.
Okay.
And we've been looking into that more deeply. So I want to be sure that those things aren't looked at separately, but in fact, this is a way to accomplish that first mile, last mile connectivity as well.
Absolutely.
Would those vehicles be electric or energy efficient?
They can be, and that would be our commitment. That obviously CAT has really taken, I think, especially for a system our size, Director, some really bold steps. We have as many electric buses right now in our fleet as MARTA does. We are looking to expand that. We are bringing in electric paratransit vehicles, which is a very similar vehicle size to this. We're looking at hybrid with our ferries. There's no doubt that this system and this board you're strongly committed to sustainability and those kinds of practices, and especially with the burgeoning industry in the electric vehicle space that's happening around us, I think that that's a smart bet to think that we're going to look at that as a primary option with this.
Absolutely, good question. Microtransit works well when the zones are relatively small, so the trips are not terribly long, and so that's consistent with the capabilities of hybrid buses and battery electric buses. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. How cost effective will this be? Well, I mean, compared to Uber and things like that, do you know?
It tends to be a little bit more costly on a per passenger basis than a busy fixed route bus. But as I said previously, if it's in an area that's sort of low density, where our fixed route wouldn't carry a lot of passengers per hour, it's more cost effective than running a large fixed route bus. It's more like an Uber or an Lyft, except that the vehicle can and will pick up multiple passengers. So maybe it stopped and picked me up and I'm on the way to a meeting, and halfway to my meeting it picked up another passenger. So it will overlap trips in real time.
I think that's something too that you'll hear more about in the financial strategies piece of this, Director Adams. But I think for the user, it will likely have a lower cost point because it is public transit than a private service. But it will nonetheless, as Tim just pointed out, it will be a far more cost-effective way to serve that trip than continuing to just try to do it with fixed route.
Exactly. Now
Question.
I mentioned, I'm sorry, another question?
Yes, sir. Where would the pickup location be? Would that be coming from people's home or a designated place?
Great question. With microtransit service, we can use designated stops if we choose to, but most of the trip pickups and drop-off points would not be a designated stop. They're wherever the customer wants to be picked up and dropped off. So it's literally door to door.
Are you familiar with the, I think it's called the postman problem?
The postman problem. No,
where
I've not
it's
heard that
finding
term.
the shortest route in a complex map between where you are and where you want to go. And it's kind of a hard problem to solve, but they figured out how to do it, obviously. And I'm interested to understand how the microtransit program prioritizes and routes and reroutes as new rides come up. Like, how does that work?
Well, the algorithms that run behind this software are complex and proprietary.
So I think
if I knew the answer, I'd probably make twice as much per year.
Well, I think that's part of it, but the other part I would encourage is I will, if you're interested, I'm glad to send out a copy of our Smart Grant application to you, because you'll recall that one of the pieces of that is a technology piece very similar to what Tim was just describing, what was developed by Georgia Tech. That does exactly, it helps make those smart decisions in the moment with the requests that are coming in and what's going on in the system. So we can send you that so you can read up a little bit about, at least that's how one type of technology application would work. But as Tim just said, for the rest of it.
In fact, the algorithm and the computer infrastructure that does that behind the scenes, normally in a microtransit system, the way that we acquire that is much like the way you buy software, only there's an annual fee. So imagine a very, very capable piece of software that's probably going to cost about $20,000 a year and takes care of all that routing and scheduling in real time behind the scenes.
And
So I heard you saying that Chatham Transit, some of that cost. So just say a person in Pooler, like, in paratransit, everybody pays the same cost, same price. With this, is it going to be zoned out or zip code out to how much the person is paying, or will it be a standard rate for everyone that uses it?
I think we haven't designed that yet, Director, so it's going to take us a little bit of time, I think, to give you really precise and exact and accurate answers to those kinds of things. But the range of things that we can do to determine what those costs will be discussed a little bit later in some of the financial strategies work as well.
Okay.
But I think it's a to be determined exactly how we design our system.
Yeah, because a person that's in Port Wentworth or Pooler would probably be at a
We lost the sound.
Gosh.
you know, a passenger in Pooler or Port Wentworth, if it's zoned out or by zip code, would pay more than a person that's in the city. That's why I was asking if it's not going to be a standard rate.
Well, I think those are the important questions to be asking now, Director, and appreciate you bringing that up. Like I said, I don't think we have all the answers for you yet because we haven't fully designed a system yet to be able to look at all of those kinds of pieces to it. But obviously, those are all questions we're going to need to answer. And again, we're going to discuss, I think, some of this in more detail during the financial strategies. Yes, they're nodding at me, yes.
Okay.
So, thank you.
I'm excited to hear a lot of interest and a lot of questions about microtransit. It can be a good tool in our toolbox, if you will.
This is on. I would love as much information as you can throw at me about microtransit and usability. Sometimes I feel like it is sort of used as a Band-Aid for complex transit situations, and we'll just throw microtransit at it. And so any sort of usability cases or use cases in other communities, I think, maybe I speak for other members on the board, I'd be very interested in, because I do want to make sure that it does seem like we're going to try to solve a lot of problems with microtransit, which would be great if it does work, and not just work from a technical standpoint, but also from a usability standpoint. I do think that to use microtransit, you're going to have a cell phone or a smartphone, and I think that's fine. We have really, really high percentages of people at all income levels who are using smartphones now. I'm not concerned about that necessarily, but there is a big difference between well-designed and not well-designed interfaces on smartphones. And so I do want to make sure, I think it would behoove us to spend a pretty penny on a well-designed piece of software if we're going to do it. So, and that's more of a message for my fellow board members.
Director Edmonds,
I agree. I agree.
Directors, we appreciate these questions. I do think that as we continue to move forward through this evaluation, that kind of detail is going to be absolutely essential, and you're right to be asking it now. I think one of the things we're hoping to do right now, we're glad to send you some examples of other systems. One of the things that you'll see, there's some systems, I think, was Sacramento one Sacramento is one that I looked at early on that has had an expanded microtransit service in place for a bit, several years, and it has been pretty successful with it. They did it through a private provider, and that was one commitment that we made early on, is we wanted to do this with our own vehicles and our own ATU local operators. So we remain committed to that way of providing the service. I think what we're trying to do now is to say, though, and I think this is sort of a fundamental, at least from my perspective as your CEO, this is a fundamental thing to think about, is public transit is really at a deciding point nationally, I think, right now, and we are here too. And it's not just what coming out of COVID did, but there's the whole emergence of ride-hail services and how that was beginning to impact people's choices and how they got around and how they got to the places they needed and wanted to go. And I think if we continue to rely upon fixed route and corresponding paratransit services as the exclusive tools in our toolkit, we're going to miss the opportunity to, one, serve more of our community that needs us the most, and also to be able to continue to prosper as a great public transit provider. So I think the notion of putting all of these things out that you're going to be hearing about is, I think you're bringing up those detailed questions that are incredibly important. I don't want you to think we've skated past those at all. We're trying to say, let's talk about what kind of tools we want to put in our toolkit and think about those, and then all of those details are really going to have to be developed to the great questions that you're asking.
Great, thank you for that. And another tool that we are looking at to add to our toolbox, we've titled it Suburban Employment Transit. What we're looking at is we need a more flexible, more innovative way to reach new jobs that are sort of on the fringe of Savannah, sort of suburban job locations. And specifically, an idea that we are looking at is what we call a flex route. And this, the first place that we could try this is off the Route 3. So imagine, if you will, another vehicle, and it could be a smaller bus or a large van, that heads out the Route 3, only this one's special because this one, people at a job site can call for the vehicle to actually come to them. So it would stop at any existing stop along Augusta Road, but when it has a call to go to, for instance, an Amazon distribution center and pick up, 3 people that are about to get off their shift, it will divert off the route and it will do that, unlike the regular Route 3, which will stick to its route. So this is called Flex Transit. We see this potentially being applicable in several zones or several corridors, but we think the first is maybe out the Augusta Road area. And as I mentioned earlier, we're seeing a lot of job growth in that direction. So we think this has promise. It has. There are many, many more details to work out, but I wanted to let you know that's potentially another tool in the toolkit. And then the third new tool that I wanted to share with you is the idea of what's called bus rapid transit. Bus rapid transit can mean a lot of things in a lot of different places, but essentially it's trying to make buses in a high demand corridor faster and more efficient. And that can be a lot of different things. But for example, here in Savannah on Abercorn, we have the Route 14. It's our busiest bus route. We're running about, I think, 5 buses at a time there. We have probably potential to serve even more customers more quickly. One of the pieces of technology that we would like to see employed here is called transit signal priority. So that's a priority, that's a system where the traffic signal sees a bus coming. The bus has a little piece of equipment on it. It's called a transponder, tells the signal, here I come, and the signal changes to let the bus advance. Now, there are many other little design details that we can consider adding on the corridor, but together those features can make the buses move more efficiently, more effectively in the corridor. You can get the passenger there faster. It can also help the bus stay on schedule during peak periods.
Tim, I was going to mention, because our board is familiar with that we are doing a signal priority project right now with GDOT and the city of Savannah on Abercorn and Waters. And with exactly, we just, I think a meeting or 2 meetings ago, maybe approved the agreement with GDOT to accept that equipment into our vehicles and into the city of Savannah, into the signal boxes and so forth. So we're going to get to see some of that, just that signal prioritization piece in action, and how that can help smooth overall traffic flow, but certainly also enhance our on-time performance in the Abercorn and Waters corridors.
Is this app user friendly for people that are visually impaired? Because, like I said, it seems to be a good service, but people that are visually impaired will probably be using that service a lot. When paratransit is loaded down or whatever. And so I want to know, the person who helped design this, did they even think about people that are visually impaired or blind?
Good question. Back to the microtransit app. The apps themselves are available through a number of vendors. And what we would recommend is we detail out in narrative what we're looking for. We put that out for bids. We let the vendors bid and tell us what they've got, what they're going to give us, and what they're going to charge us for it. So the answer will vary depending on which software provider we are looking at. But I do also want to say that with any of them, because you're basically buying that app, that software on an annual subscription basis, most of them also have an option to include human operators in that process, so that anybody, so say my mom who has a smartphone and doesn't know how to use it very well, if she prefers to, she can just dial a number and speak to a human who's in a call center, and the person in the call center will put their trip in the app for them. So that really helps with that accessibility issue. But again, the answer is going to vary a little bit depending on which vendor we decide to go with, but that will be up to us to shop different vendors.
Tim, I think your point was well made, though, and I think I appreciate Director Taylor bringing that up. Our strong commitment, just like our strong commitment is to sustainability, is to accessibility of the service, right. All of our services. And so the notion that we have the opportunity when we're speccing out this this request for proposals or whatever method we use for procurement. The fact that we can include that in the specifications of the desired kind of operating characteristics we want around access for all
Right.
is something that would be important to us and we would include.
Well, the main thing I'm concerned about is all passengers having options. It's kind of frustrating. I'm pretty much technically savvy, but everyone that's visually impaired is not. And I know it gets frustrated to them if one thing doesn't work and that's the only option that they have. That's why I asked the question.
Yes, great question. I thank you for allowing me to share some initial ideas when we haven't figured out all the details yet, and
Right.
appreciate all the input and questions along the way. I'm going to ask Bethany, who's going to sort of pivot over to the medium long-term ideas being developed in the master plan. And just wanted to say, we will continue to work with your staff even today and even over the next few weeks, working out some of the details on these ideas and continuing to work with the master plan to see how the short range ideas are going to fit well with the long range ideas.
Yeah, okay, perfect. Okay, thank you. So we're going to move into the master transit plan, and Yanisa's handing out some handouts for folks. I think most of this you have received online. And we're going to ask you to vote or to use, we're going to give you some cat bucks that you can use to vote for your preferred strategies. So if you go to that, oh, does this work? I just wanted to say, we might have a photo in here, maybe I haven't used it, but we did do some focus groups. Last month we were in town with Denise and Whitney. We did some focus groups to talk about microtransit. We met with some high school students at Johnson High School, as well as 2 groups of community members, and we showed them the concept of microtransit, asked them the way that, did they like that? What did they like about it? How would we need to adapt it to make it more useful to them? And we got a lot of really great data and a lot of good insights from them. And we also have some really fun photos, which you might see in the presentation. I'm sure you'll start to see them, but of some of the students in Johnson High School who had a really fun time telling us about their transportation challenges and needs and opportunities. So I think Faye did a really good job kind of giving you an update on the plan and the state of the system. So I'm not going to spend any time going over that. Oh, I think this is the wrong presentation. This is the one that you gave, Faye, right? Hold on one second. Oh, do you have it right behind it? Oh, okay, perfect. I'll just keep going.
Directors who are online, if you'll give us just a minute, we're having to bring up the presentation. Just one moment.
Or Beverly's a master of all details relative to the meeting. It's not an easy job. I do have it on a flash drive.
You have it on flash drive?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Cabot sailed back to England with
While we wait,
wait, no,
Yes, Director Robinson.
are we still waiting?
Yes, ma'am. I think they're about to pull it up.
Okay, well, I just want to inject something that as we move along, we have great ideas, great innovative things we want to do, but we can only do what we can do within our budget constraints.
Well, you're
So-
gonna hear quite a bit about financial strategies that I think you're gonna find really interesting, and will broaden the understanding of how, in fact, we can grow our financial base in order to be able to support improvements in our service delivery and so forth. So, but I completely understand. You're right. We can only do what we can financially support.
And I'm mainly talking about building the upfront money you have to have in order to make these things happen.
I think one of the things, and I'll just take a minute to plug this while they're still bringing that up. I think one of those funding sources, one of the things that we've been stressing over and over is, in addition to having more tools in our toolkit about how we provide service, is the part about not what we provide, but how we provide it, and how we provide it being the financial piece. And I think that tools like a T-Splost as another tool in the toolkit, tools like the expanded state funding that we've been able to actually secure over the course of the last several months in working with state partners and with our legislative delegation, being strategic about grant partnerships and other public-private partnerships. Example, one of the things that we did in the service expansion with Garden City was we costed that out, and they chose to support the cost to expand that service. We're having the exact same conversation, or we'll be having the exact same conversation, but the same approach is going to be taken with Port Wentworth. Same kind of approach, and you saw that earlier maybe in the presentation with regard to providing some connection to job opportunities, is those private entities that are helping to generate those opportunities have also got to be a part of how they get their workforce there. And so public-private partnerships, and we're successful with that. We know how to do that. We're very successful at that. So we're not going to propose anything that we can't financially support and deliver, not just in the immediate, but for the longer term. But we also want to be sure that we're thinking about the fact that that financial portfolio has got to expand beyond the very important core partners that we've had for a long time with Chatham County and the city of Savannah and some of our other local partners that have been investing in CAT for years. So those things are very important. Preserving those is very important, and growing those things so that we can provide better is also going to be an important part of that. But new things like T-Splost and some of the things that you've seen us immediately have success in just in the last year are also going to be important parts of that.
Right. Thank you. And just to kind of tag on to that, we're going to talk about what we can do. And then when we come back in April, we're going to talk about the financing and the how to get it done. And so it's just two clear steps to this strategy. So today we're just not worrying about money quite as much, but we do know that that's a big part of what we're trying to do. And we're going to come back to you with financial strategies next month. So all of the strategies that we're going to walk you through today and ask you to tell us what your priorities are based on the state of the system. These are some of the analysis that Tim and his team did, as well as the Nelson Nygaard team have worked on. And we also talked a lot about these last week when we met with you all. The driver shortage, the 8 core bus routes that carry 80% of all the transit riders in the CAT system right now. How do we enhance those services to maximize our impact? And then for those other parts of the system that are carrying fewer riders, adjust and use new service models like microtransit to address those, meet those needs. And then also the fact that the fastest growing parts of the region are outside of the service area. Again, Tim had a couple ideas. We're going to share a couple more about how we get people to work. And we make sure that transportation is not a barrier to access to opportunity. Partners, Mr. Massimo just mentioned all the partners and how important they are to CAT. That continues to be there. Zero fare is also a strategy we want to look at, but then again, the operating costs, we have to pay attention to that. And we also have some capital needs that we're going to talk about. So we grouped our strategies into 3 buckets: transit services, capital investment, and then policies and programs. And George is going to go through the transit services and the capital investment ones. We're going to go through quickly because we're going to have some time, but feel free to ask questions. But we do have we're going to look back to you all to tell us what you think.
Thank you, Bethany. Let's see. So as Bethany said, I'm going to run through some of our strategies that we've come up with. Think of this as kind of a menu of options that the next kind of step will be prioritizing. So we wanted to introduce some of these different strategies that we think could make sense in various areas of Savannah and Chatham County. And let's think about these different strategies and let's start prioritizing and see how each of them may fit into the broader picture. So this first one may seem obvious, but it's important to talk about, and that's just simply increasing the service levels. You can do this a couple of different ways. The first being frequency improvements, and we have over here on the right a map that shows those 8 routes that are carrying the 80% of the ridership. So ridership isn't evenly distributed across the system. You've got certain routes that just have a lot more density, a lot more people, a lot more jobs, a lot more demand. So maybe it makes sense to improve the frequencies along certain areas, certain corridors, and some of these routes to get folks where they give them more options instead of maybe hourly service. Maybe talk about 30-minute, 15, 20-minute service. Increasing where we can to get folks where they need to go a little bit quicker. You can also expand the hours, so like longer hours on more days. Maybe a little bit earlier in the day or even later in the day. That would also qualify as an increased service level. And so down here I want to draw your attention to on the bottom left, we have a series of check boxes on each of the strategies, how they address some of the things that we've been looking to as goals. So increasing service levels, for instance, you'd be improving your connections and passenger experience. You'd also be reducing the travel time and as well as improving equity. And so a couple of these slides are going to let you know the strategies are similar not only in the short term but the long term too. So microtrans, as we discussed, is really interesting and growing service delivery model across the U.S. And we think there's opportunity both in the short and the long term for microtransit to be one of those tools in the toolkit to use in some of the areas in the service area, both to potentially expand that service area and then also look at different locations that maybe it doesn't make as much sense to operate a 40-footer down some small neighborhood roads that are just don't have as many passengers. Maybe it's a shift in service to microtransit where those vehicles are dynamic. We talked about the technology and dynamic routing that can reach those passengers within 20-30 minutes rather than asking those same passengers to walk maybe 30 minutes to catch a bus that only comes once an hour. Just thinking about things a little bit differently and how we're reaching those customers, it might be an additional good strategy to have. We have the same strategy goals. Down in the left, we'd be expanding service and improving connections. And then, but also improving that passenger experience, coming out to the passengers. Maybe it's door-to-door service rather than asking those same passengers to walk much farther. Bus rapid transit, that's another strategy that probably makes sense both in the short term, but then also in the long term. There are a lot of different bells and whistles that you can add for bus rapid transit that make it a much more premium, attractive service, very comfortable. We've got a couple examples over on the right, including GRTC on Broad Street, the Pulse. I don't know if you might be familiar with, but the stations are very comfortable. A lot of the corridor has exclusive right-of-way, so the bus isn't contending as much with mixed traffic. So that creates a quicker travel time, more pleasant passenger experience. A lot of times you brand the premium service as something distinguishable from the local service, and it's really kind of an attraction to go to and use this premium service. So things like improved reliability and that passenger experience and reduced travel time are some of the goals that this strategy would meet. Tim talked about how the area is growing. There's a lot of jobs within Chatham County that we could still reach. We did this exercise of mapping some of the largest employers, not only in Savannah and Chatham County, but the region, because really the region is growing at a tremendous rate. So what we've done here is mapped a lot of the employers, these large employers that have 100 or more employees. We mapped the Hyundai EV plan as well. It really has been, what's really impressed me is since even working on this project, new projects have come online. New announcements are being made regularly. We're sharing emails about how various plants are planned for implementation over the next few years. It's really growing, and how we meet that demand, both within Savannah and Chatham County, but then outside counties too, is something that we've been looking at. And so bus on shoulder is another strategy that probably makes a lot of sense with that express bus. And so this is something that you may have seen. It's very popular in places like Minnesota, where you have that you utilize that shoulder lane, and there obviously work to be done to figure out which shoulders are safe and can meet that capacity. In terms of width and so on, but there are examples across the country where shoulders are being utilized for transit vehicles, maybe at certain times of day or just certain stretches, where the bus can hop out onto the shoulder and circumvent a lot of the traffic. So it improves that passenger experience as well as reliability and travel times. So we're also going to talk about a couple capital investments that as strategies that would improve service. So bus stop improvements is one of the first ones. So we did a series of focus groups. This is something that we heard over and over that and as Faye has talked about, Ms. Massimo, how that I love how she phrases this, that the passenger, that trip doesn't start on the bus, it really starts at that bus stop, and that's just so true. That you want passengers to feel safe and comfortable, and have a dignified area that's attractive to wait as you wait on the vehicle to arrive. So things like shelters and seating and lighting, trash cans, all of these various passenger amenities at bus stops could really go a long way for relatively smaller amounts of capital investment. So we also want to talk a little bit about mobility hubs. And so this is an idea that you get at various locations, that especially in areas that have a lot of passenger activity, you can not only have the bus stop located there with upgraded amenities, but you can connect to things like ride share and micro mobility, bike share, and have nice improved location for vehicle drop off and pickup. But increasing that those passenger amenities, taking that next step to where that it's more of a mobility hub rather than just an improved bus stop. And so this speaks to things like expanding the service to new areas, and then improving connections. That's probably the biggest one here. And then also, of course, that passenger experience.
I'm going to have a handful more, right? Policies and programs. Yep. Thanks, George. So a couple things about zero fare. We also have an idea about fare capping. We can talk a little bit more. It's outlined in your strategy book, but it allows people to pay if they're paying, instead of having to shell out $30 or $40 at the beginning of the month, and then they get unlimited rides for that month. As soon as they've spent $30 or $40, then all the rides after that are free. It's a strategy that's being used widely in the transit industry, has a lot of promise. It could be something that we could try here as well. Zero fares, of course. The DOT shuttles and the ferry services are zero fare. They attract a lot of riders. How do we introduce some of the zero fare concepts into the network in order to increase access to transit and make things more accessible and bring those riders back to the system, especially where we can find partners to help support that fare-free piece. Job access vouchers is another one. This is something that we started talking about, where this is a program that's a national program where people who are, when you have a job interview, you can get a free ride using Uber or Lyft or a taxi to that first, to that interview. And then once you get the job, you get the first 3 weeks paid for as part of your transportation. That gives you a little bit of time to figure out how you're going to get to work, gives you opportunity to do something, set up a carpooling program or a situation, find somebody else who works there in your neighborhood. But this is something that we could do, as soon as we identify a funding source. It doesn't have a lot of administrative costs to it, doesn't require any drivers with CDLs, but it really does improve people's access to jobs. So it could be a really important and valuable strategy. All right, and then van pools is another one. Again, it's a program we don't need CDL drivers to implement, something that we could start on a short notice, especially if we have major employers outside of the service area. We could organize vans. We need 5 or 6 people to agree to travel together. They would pay a monthly fee. Lots of times the employers are willing to help with that and subsidize those costs, but those vans could then bring folks to the job site, and they can make sure that they get there at the same time, they work the same shift, and then they come home. Oftentimes a van pool program also does allow people to use the van on the weekend, which can be super attractive to folks. And then transit-oriented development. This is something we've heard in our steering committee. It is a longer-term strategy. It is something that it would require expanding what CAT does a little bit, but it is something that I think we have to keep talking about, because as a region grows, we want to make sure that we're developing in a way that can be served by transit. And how can CAT exercise that voice in the community and make sure that people know when there is a new development that they can design it in a way that it's better served by transit. All right, and I think that is all of the strategies. So we wanted to do an activity. We don't have a lot of people left in person. So I think I think we're going to set up a Menti poll. I'll let you go ahead and.
If we also can really quickly before
Amanda,
you do
sorry.
that, if I could ask so we've mentioned to you that today we're really zeroing in on the what. What are the things that seem interesting or promising to you as a board?
If somebody's talking, we don't hear.
You don't have anybody?
Nope, don't hear a thing.
Here we go.
Is she talking? Because I don't hear her.
Hello?
Did you get a daily reward in Freckle?
Might have turned her microphone on.
Can you hear me?
Director
you
Cody,
now.
can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
So what I was saying was we're going to do an activity with you today. And remember, today is really about the what. We really want to dig into what are the things that we've talked about? What are the strategies? What are the possibilities that have been thrown out there that are interesting to you? They've been interesting to the groups that we've heard from and to the steering committee and so forth, but we want to hear what your thoughts are on these things as well. And so today is really going to be your reaction to some of these what might be. But know that next month, we're really going to be digging into the all important financial strategies piece. We know that that's a part that you focus on, that we certainly focus on, and it's key to us being able to do any of the what. But we want to start from this conversation about saying, well, what do we want the system maybe to look like? What do we want it to kind of what are the tools we might want to put in our toolkit, knowing we've got a forthcoming detailed conversation on finances. To that end, just to give you a little bit before we dig into just the what today, InfoStrategies, Amanda Vandergriff is here with us today, and she's going to be one of the principals that's really going to be digging into those financial details next month, but she's going to give you a little something today to understand where that's kind of moving, to give you some framework around this what today.
Thank you, Ms. DeMassimo. So as part of this visionary, everything that you've seen now is a vision, and we're going to be taking that vision and fiscally constraining it in your agency's first, I believe, long-term financial model. So we're developing a financial model right now. It's going to look at this upcoming budget right now that you're preparing, and then look at the next 5 years, the next 10 years, and then out to the next 30 years, and help you align what you've seen today with what potentially you could fund. And so we will start with the early near-term strategies of looking at your COVID relief funds and what's going to happen when those run out, and what kind of sources can you use in the short term to then supplement that revenue stream. But then we're also going to look at bigger items like T-SPLOST, which Ms. DeMassimo mentioned earlier, all the way up to potentially a transit SPLOST in the 30-year time period. So we're going to explore all of that and show several different scenarios in the financial model. And so we'll talk a little more about some of those options and what kind of revenue impact it could have and what could be funded. The financial model will also help us look at how we'd phase these types of initiatives over a time period. So what could we do next year? What could we do in 5 years? And what's really more of a long-term investment? So looking forward to talk more with you all about that in April. And we'll also talk a little more about the financial implications of a zero fare concept and fare capping and all of the innovative fare policy ideas that are out there right now.
So it's going to be comprehensive and cover both the short and longer terms, and it will also have some project specific pieces in it. So there may be some unique opportunities. One thing I can tell you is that in an earlier, some earlier work that InfoStrategies has done for CAT that was related to our budget development that we have in place now, Ms. Cutter and I both have used the tools that were developed as a part of that in terms of solving some of the problems that have faced us. We all know we've had some projects that have had shortfalls on the capital funding side and have come in with bids that were far higher than we expected and so forth. And we've literally taken the tools that were given to us as a part of our budget development, that InfoStrategies development, and use that to problem solve. So we're looking really forward to that detailed conversation next month and know the value that it can bring to this much bigger conversation about an overall master transit plan. Thank you.
I've got a question on what the is overall branding part of the conversation as we sort of retool. Kind of looks like the underlying financial framework and the underlying route framework of CAT. I'm just interested.
So we don't have that in our strategies now, but we can add that.
Because and just a couple of thoughts on that while I got you guys all here. Like the DOT shuttle, for example. Does anybody know that that's a CAT product? The fare-free ferry. Do people know that that is a CAT product? And some of our like highest useful products that we've got are not branded CAT, which is kind of unfortunate because all that good energy or good marketing that we gain from that isn't really coming back to what could help us with the tax referendum, you know, in like 10 or 5 years. And so just making sure that we can funnel as much good, positive energy and news towards CAT. And I feel like kind of thinking about a branding, I mean, all organizations have done this, you know, AT&T and Bell Labs and the changes that happened there. I just think it really should be a large part if we are going to make some major changes to the whole CAT thing, to include that as well.
Yeah, agreed. And if we go beyond Chatham County, right? You know, how do we do that? How do we talk about CAT and still serve Effingham or Bryan County, right? Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I think, really and also this idea, I just was having this, so I don't know if it's the right form, but like maybe we need to talk about regional transit authority as well, instead of just a county-based system. And because the transit master plan is looking beyond, we don't have to solve all that problems, but we need to make sure that we're identifying it so that as we're moving towards that and we expand beyond the Chatham County boundaries, that we have that in there.
It's kind of what you just said there. It kind of makes me think that we have a responsibility to not only operate CAT fiscally and well and et cetera, but also kind of be the people thinking about transit regionally. I mean, I don't think there's a lot of other groups or rooms like this that are thinking so heavily about transportation regionally all the time. And although we may not necessarily be tasked with that in our state charter, I mean, it does kind of make sense that somebody should be thinking about it because it's obvious how quickly it's growing.
Really interesting point to that regard. If you want to look at a place that's done something like that too, you don't have to go far. So Nashville, the WeGo transit system in Nashville has both a component that is their metro transit service, that is everything in Nashville, Davidson, in the county, and then they have one that goes beyond the county, and they manage the same system, serves and manages both, but they're providing some little bit different services, some more regional services in one context, and they're more quote metro services in another, and they do it in a fully coordinated and integrated fashion, but very similar to us. Where you have certain kinds of, whether they're legislative or legal or other kinds of jurisdictional parameters, it enabled them to be able to do it all, but set it up in a way that it could be coordinated and so forth. So it was interesting when you both were saying that. The first thing I thought about was my good colleagues up in Nashville and how they're doing exactly what is being discussed here. And I do think that it's important to put these kinds of really forward-thinking thoughts out there. It doesn't mean we have to do it now or act upon it right now, but it means it's out there and it's something now to kind of think about and noodle on. So very good.
Yeah.
And I'd like to make one comment. We're doing talking about this, this innovative, creative way to improve CAT. And I think in upcoming conversations, I'd like to see us narrow it into what does really fit within Savannah Chatham County service area. So I think we've seen a lot of what's happening nationally. All that's great, but Chatham, Savannah is a unique situation. And I'd like for us to start to focus in on, when you talk to at least to me, tell me, how does this fit into the Savannah Chatham County structure that will ensure that our clients get to where they need to be in the best means possible?
That's exactly our intent with the work that we're doing, but I so appreciate you grounding us back to that, Director Robinson, and reminding us that it's not just about how we're doing the work, because I think we're doing the work exactly that way, but I think it's the notion of how we express the work we're doing and how we explain the work that we're doing with that keen eye towards, and how does this fit Savannah Chatham, and how does it enable us to get our folk to where they need and want to go and do it in the most efficient and effective way. So I so appreciate you grounding us back to that in terms of not just what we're doing, because I do think we're doing exactly that, but how we're talking about it. Really important.
Agreed. Is there any other questions? All right, so Yanisa is going to get us started on the activity. We only have a handful of people in the room, so we're going to move everybody to the online voting.
Thanks, everyone. So for our activity today, we have the 12 strategies that Bethany and George just explained to you all. And as we move towards our April meeting, where we are looking at more of a financial constraint, we'd like to know from you all how you would prioritize the 12 strategies given a limited amount of money. So for those online, in the chat, we've dropped a link for you to a Menti poll, where if you click on it, you can allocate $100 to the 12 strategies. And then for those in the room, in the little note card, you can go to that link on your phones, or I can also lend you my computer if that would be easier. And on that, you can do the same activity that folks online are doing. And basically, with the $100, if you really like one strategy and think that the transit agency should be putting all of its resources into that one, you can give it the $100 or 100 points. Or if you want to distribute the wealth a little bit, you can give like 10 points to everything. So it's really up to you on how you might want to do this. And then we can try to show the results online after people are done.
This helps us to understand your sort of relative prioritization across all of these different potential strategies, and really helpful input to us in terms of how we continue to move forward. So thank you all so much for participating in this.
So we'll give you some time to fill it in, and then we can come back and, and look at the results.
Does service levels include frequency and time?
Both frequency and span. So how often the buses come and if you want them to run later or early in the morning. Yeah, and these are still pretty general right now. We know that there's many ways to do each of these strategies. It's more of just a high level ranking.
If any of the directors online are having any issues with accessing the voting, let us know, and we'll make sure that someone's offering you some assistance.
I don't see it on my end.
Is that Director Odell?
It is.
Okay. It's in the chat, Director Odell. I think you click on it's a link in the chat.
Yes,
There's a link in the chat that you click on and it'll open it up.
Okay.
In the institution of the legal, the need for them to believe. Well, that's a really good question, because for the last couple of years, they've been railing institutions they traditionally defended. But when you start with January 6th, where they were criticizing the police for not, the Capitol Police for not taking care of the riot. 140 of them injured and several of them died, and then moving on to even calls on the extreme right from people like Marjorie Taylor Greene to defund the FBI. This is, they are go for broke, as I said.
Okay, can I put any number between 1 and 10 in this box or no?
Yeah, so you have 100 points total for all 12 strategies, so you can put anything from 0 to 100 in each box. You just can't go over.
It does round up or
It does
down
round up? Okay.
to the nearest 10.
Okay, cool. So you could put 10 in each box or multiples of 10, and then you have 100 total. So then after you run out of 100, you can't put any more.
To not take seriously, there's more severe crimes. So that's a challenge going forward for them, whether or not they want to injure our institutions and trust in them solely to try to keep favor of Donald Trump's voters.
I'm trying to figure it out.
Certainly a conundrum. AB, thank you so much, Shane.
Yeah, this would have been easy if you just
But you
let
are
us do
correct.
1,
You are
2,
correct.
3.
And find time a closer look.
Transit-oriented development.
Investigations, what he was looking at, election interference, classified documents to the alleged hush money. What happens in investigations airs live tonight at 9 Eastern. And the Putin-Xi romance appears to be growing. The two leaders pledging deeper ties in week 2 of meetings in Moscow. What does that mean for the
Direct Odell, we can hear your television.
Oh, hold on.
Janet Yellen is saying about that and U.S. banks. A player on the Cuban national baseball.
Maybe another minute for people to get in their answers, and then we'll share the results on the screen. Thank you. Great. So I think we have kind of results from all of you. So basically what we're seeing here is that if you guys can see the screen, it's increasing service levels and bus stop improvements are the ones with the that you all have given the most money, followed by mobility hubs, microtransit, express bus, and transit-oriented development. And then following that, kind of the remainder. So bus rapid transit, bus on shoulder, fare capping, zero fares, job access vouchers, and a band pool program last. So this is really helpful for us to, as we go into the next step of our process. And tomorrow morning, we have a meeting with the stakeholders where we'll be running through them with the same exercise with about 40 people. And we'll do that in person with some kind of physical fake money there.
And you know, the point for me is there's some things that we cannot control, like bus on shoulders. You know, it's a great idea, but you have to get involved. You have to get the traffic people involved and those kind of things that we don't control. So I would put my money on things that I know that I control.
Right, and so in the strategy booklets that we can send to you all later for those who are online, we do list some of these strategies will require partnerships with people, and so they're not off the picture, but do require a little bit more coordination than some things that CAT can do alone.
Quick question. I just want to make sure I'm reading the lines right. So the ones that are 8% and above fall down to transit orient. It's TOD and everything above TOD that's either 8% or above, with the two clear out fronts, increased service levels and bus stop improvements, right?
Yep, correct.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you.
Could I offer some feedback on this?
Yeah, definitely.
Activity? I think what we're really good at as a board is not necessarily figuring out which strategies to use, because that's not our specialty, and we don't work in the transit space all the time. I feel like our job as board members, and the reason that we are on the board, is not for technical expertise per se, but for trying to get a temperature reading of values of the community and values of the area. And so I feel like I'd like to have questions from you guys ask me about, like, what are the values that this community has around transit, and then it's kind of up to you guys to tell me, okay, then here's how we do that. We use any of these situations. Honestly, this might sound a little harsh, but I don't really care which one works as long as it's holding up the values of what the community needs. I think if this one is telling me anything, it's that, like, this board does not particularly like having people wait for the bus, or not have access to a bus, because and waiting around on bus stops, we hear that a lot. We hear that all the time, and so I think that is just going to sort of rise to the top. But are there other strategies? I would not necessarily, if some of these got only 2 or 8%, don't throw them away. Don't throw them out. They may actually be really effective at, you know, increasing service levels, et cetera. We just don't know that. So if I may, I think what we're good at as a board is trying to suss out values, and asking us necessarily what strategies to use might get you not the right information that you're actually looking for.
That's a good point. Thank you. And I do think on that values piece, like knowing things like, yeah, people are saying a lot about bus stops, and their wait times can help. Like, even if we talk about microtransit, for example, we know that we might need to set a smaller wait time on the app as like our criteria. So I think we can use some of the results of this to help basically feed. They're not really mutually exclusive with each strategy by itself, and it's more of how the strategies kind of work with the whole program as well. So thank you. And okay, I'm going to turn it back to someone else.
Thank you, guys. I think that was it for us, but thank you so much. And I really appreciate those comments, because it is true. And when you look at the booklet too, you'll see that it does talk about what goals this strategy works towards. I think that helps a little bit with the values. And then, as Yanisa mentioned, so everybody should have one of these. And it also provides, I think somebody asked for best practice examples. Those are in here. As well as, you know, some of the other cities, and we tried to focus on communities in the Southeast as well that are doing some of these things. So We'll be coming back to you in a month, talking about money and how to get this done within the existing resources. And we have some stakeholder meeting tomorrow, and then we're going to have another stakeholder. Yeah, we've got a lot of activities going on in the next couple of months, and they should be in your calendar as well.
The booklet is available online, right?
It is
They all have it
available online in color. We have some black and white hard copies.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you all. I hope that this was helpful conversation, and starting to roll out some of the strategies and the areas that we believe are going to be a part of the tools in our toolkit, and how we end up using those tools and when we use those tools, of course, is yet to be determined. But this is a good big bite of all the work that's been done to date and is continuing to be done. So we thank you all as board members for all of the time and attention that you've committed to this today. Thank you. And with that, Chairman, I'm going to turn it back over to you for next meeting and adjournment.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Massimo. Much appreciated. I appreciate the presentations by everyone. I think we got some great input on it. And moving forward, I want to piggyback off of Director Edmiston. I agree with a lot of what was said. And I did want to ask one final question, I imagine. On this survey, have we given this type of survey to the people, to the bus riders? I think that's what, we have to circle around what the people in the community, what the bus riders are wanting. What are they saying that that's much needed? And then we can feed around that as a board to get those things accomplished. I want to, do we have any more questions?
I'm sorry, Director Cody, really quickly, both this same survey, but other types of venues for people to offer input about this and other things that just concern them, to the point that you and Director Edminster made about what does the community think. There's been a variety of different opportunities, whether that's public meetings or focus groups or stakeholder meetings, and this tool and other tools have been used to gather exactly that kind of input, so that once we've gone over some of the what, and then we talk next meeting about the how, when you see this again, it'll have all of it wrapped together. After you talk some about the what and some about the how we'll do it, the financial strategies, then how that all fits together along with the public's perspective and stakeholders' perspective and particular community groups' perspectives will all be represented in what's brought back to you in sort of a full document a little later in the process.
Thank you, ma'am.
Sure.
Yeah, believe me, there's no doubt about what you and staff are doing. I think you're doing an excellent job, and I appreciate everything you're doing and bringing to us. At this time, our next regular board meeting will be March 28th. And I look forward to seeing everybody there. I thank everybody for their participation today. And I would like to adjourn this meeting at this time. Thank you.
Thank you.
So they've got to replace the transit one. It's kind of funny because I had a ZBA meeting planned at 8 in the morning. So I guess that's not gonna happen. What's your cafe? Waters Cafe. It's right down the street. It's very new. I'm like, cool. Love that. That'll be exciting. To be honest, I was a little concerned about how to fit all that meeting in that space. So let's kind of get out.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're looking for lunch, we're open till 4.